fog settled over Grayson Hollow like a memory that refused to fade. The trees along the valley wore cloaks of dew, and the air smelled of moss and wood smoke. The townspeople said the fog came every year around the same week, always mid-October, always without warning. But no one ever spoke of the girl seen walking through it. Not out loud, at least. At the edge of the hollow, nestled behind a crumbling fence, stood the Jennings farmhouse, long abandoned, its windows gaping like blind eyes. Evelyn Farrow, just turned 16 and restless with curiosity, had grown up hearing stories about the place. Her grandmother warned her never to go near it. "Nothing good grows where sorrow sleeps," she used to say, voice trembling with some unspoken memory. But now, Granny was gone, and Evelyn, feeling both older and untethered, had no one left to tell her no. She saw the girl for the first time on a Thursday. It was late afternoon, the sky dull and bruised with oncoming rain. Evelyn had taken her usual shortcut home from school through the woods when she caught sight of movement in the trees near the Jennings property. She froze. The girl wore a white cotton dress, the hem soaked with mud. Her hair was long and black, stuck to her face in damp strands. She stood unnaturally still, as if listening, not to Evelyn, but to the earth itself. Then she turned. Their eyes met. Evelyn stumbled back, heart thudding in her chest. But when she looked again, the girl was gone. She didn't tell anyone. Who would she tell? Her father worked double shifts at the lumber yard and barely spoke anymore, and the kids at school only ever talked about phones and football. So she did the next best thing. She returned to the woods the next day. This time, she brought her camera. But the girl didn't appear. Evelyn waited for nearly an hour, pacing, listening to the wind curl through the trees, the crackle of leaves underfoot. Nothing. When the shadows grew long and the air colder, she finally turned to leave. That's when she saw it. Hanging from a crooked nail on the Jennings front porch, an old lantern. It hadn't been there the day before. She approached cautiously. The lantern was old but intact, the glass surprisingly clean, the metal frame etched with strange symbols that looked neither English nor anything she recognized. Something about it felt wrong. And yet she reached out, fingers brushing the cold handle. The instant she touched it, the air around her shifted. The forest, moments before alive with sound, went still. No birds, no insects, not even wind, just silence. Then a voice, faint, breathless, carried on the hush of fog. "Please, help me." Evelyn whipped around. No one was there. She grabbed the lantern and ran. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. The lantern sat on her desk, dark and still, but she felt its presence even with her eyes closed. Something about the symbols tugged at her memory, like an old fairy tale she'd once heard in childhood, but forgotten. She dreamed of the girl in the fog, standing at the edge of a creek, lantern in hand, pointing to something beneath the water. When she woke, her feet were damp with mud. And her window, though locked, was open. The following day, Evelyn skipped school and returned to the Jennings house. The fog had come early, creeping in before noon. As she stepped onto the porch, the lantern began to glow, not brightly, but enough to cast shadows along the warped floorboards. Evelyn held it up. "Are you here?" she whispered. A gust of cold air brushed her neck, and then the same voice, closer now, "I'm waiting." The voice came from the direction of the old mill, deep in the woods past the creek, a place the locals avoided entirely. Evelyn hesitated, fingers tightening around the lantern handle. Then she stepped off the porch and followed the voice into the fog. The path twisted beneath Evelyn's feet like a coiled snake, half eaten by moss and lined with brittle trees that clawed at the sky. The fog thickened as she walked, and the forest seemed to shrink around her. Branches bent lower, trunks grew closer, the world itself muffled like she had cotton in her ears. Only the dim light of the lantern pierced the gray. She'd never been this far into the woods before. No marked trails, no signs, just the voice. Every few minutes, it whispered again. Closer. It didn't sound threatening, more desperate. But something in Evelyn's bones told her this wasn't just a ghost story. This wasn't something she could run from if she got scared. The deeper she went, the more the fog felt like it was breathing. Finally, the trees parted. The old mill stood in a sunken clearing, half swallowed by time. Its roof had caved in decades ago, vines coiled through broken windows, and the wheel that once churned water now hung motionless, like a gallows. The fog clung thickest here. The lantern in Evelyn's hand began to hum softly. She stepped forward. There was something by the base of the mill. A shape. No, a figure. Sitting with its back to her, arms wrapped around its knees, hair cascading down like a curtain of black silk. The girl. Evelyn approached slowly, the lantern trembling in her grip. "Who are you?" she asked. The girl didn't move, but when she spoke, her voice was cold and distant, as though carried from another time. "I've been waiting so long." Evelyn knelt beside her. "What happened to you?" The girl turned her head slightly. Her eyes were pale, gray with no whites, like the sky before a storm. "He took me here. He promised warmth, but gave me the dark. He made me part of this place." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Who?" The girl didn't answer. Instead, she slowly lifted one hand and pointed toward the foundation of the mill, where a hole gaped between the stones, just large enough for someone to crawl through. Evelyn shivered. The lantern's light dimmed. "Down there?" she asked. The girl nodded once, then whispered, "If you go, you'll see. But you can't unsee." Evelyn stood, her heart hammered against her ribs. She took one cautious step toward the hole, and then stopped. A sound, a scraping, grinding sound, like nails against stone. She spun around, raising the lantern, its glow sputtering. The woods behind her looked different now, too still, too expectant. "Don't look away," the girl said behind her. Evelyn turned back, and the girl was standing now, inches from her face, eyes wide and hollow. "You can't leave until you know." The air grew colder, and then the ground beneath Evelyn cracked. A tremor, sudden and violent, sent her stumbling. The hole in the foundation split wider, coughing up a foul wind that stank of rot and metal. From its depths came a sound, wet, slithering, and impossibly loud. A hand reached up. Not a girl's hand. Something else. Long, pale fingers with too many joints, nails like claws, and behind it a face began to rise, shapeless, shifting, as though it hadn't yet decided what it wanted to look like. Evelyn screamed. The girl grabbed her arm. "You have to decide," she whispered, voice no longer her own. "Let it take you, or send it back." The lantern burst into light, brilliant and searing, and the world around Evelyn exploded into darkness. Evelyn jolted awake. She was lying on the damp forest floor, the lantern flickering beside her, its glass cracked but still intact. The morning light had begun to bleed through the treetops above, washing the world in gray and silver. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Her breath came in short gasps, her palms scraped and muddy. The mill was gone. She sat up slowly, heart still hammering. The clearing where the old building had stood was now just a pit of gnarled roots and dirt, as if nothing had ever been built there. No stone, no wooden wheel, no hole in the foundation, just earth, and a circle of dead leaves arranged perfectly, unnaturally, around where the hole had been. It hadn't been a dream. Evelyn rose unsteadily to her feet, brushing the mud from her jeans. Her mind reeled with what she had seen. The girl, the whispering, the thing that had begun to crawl from the hole. The voice that had said she had to choose. But what choice had she made? She turned around. The woods were quieter now. Not peaceful, never peaceful, but no longer pressing in on her. No more whispers, no unnatural fog. She began to walk. The path back felt shorter, as if the forest no longer tried to hold her. When she broke through the tree line and saw her car parked where she'd left it, covered in dew and fallen needles, a strange calm settled over her. She didn't look back. The days that followed blurred together. Evelyn barely spoke to anyone. She didn't tell her father what had happened in the woods. When he asked about her trip, she just said it had been strange but good for clearing her head. He'd nodded and gone back to reading the paper. But at night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the girl with the gray eyes. You can't leave until you know. And worse, she felt something. A tug. Like a thread tied to the base of her spine, pulling her back to that hole, back to the choice she'd never really made. One night, just past 2 a.m., she finally opened the lantern. She hadn't touched it since the forest. It still smelled faintly of ash and old water, and the cracked glass glimmered strangely in the moonlight. She took out the candle inside. There was something hidden beneath it. A small, thin disc of metal. Like a coin, but blank. Smooth. Cold. When she picked it up, the air in her room shifted slightly, like the pressure before a thunderstorm. She turned it over in her fingers. No inscription, no markings, just weight. Suddenly, the whispers came back. Faint, distant, not words yet, but emotion. Pleading, regret, hunger. The coin grew warm. She dropped it on the desk and backed away. In the mirror across the room, her reflection didn't move. It just stood there, staring at her. The next morning, Evelyn drove to the county archives. The woman behind the desk was polite but suspicious, especially when Evelyn asked about the old mill in Wren Hollow. "There's never been a mill there," she said without hesitation. Evelyn frowned. "That can't be right. My grandmother used to tell stories about—" "I've lived here 53 years, dear. There's no record of any mill. Not in Wren Hollow, not anywhere in that stretch of woods." "Any missing persons?" Evelyn asked. The woman paused. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. "There's always missing persons," she said after a long moment, "especially back then. But the woods are deep. People get lost. Sometimes they don't want to be found." Evelyn left with more questions than answers. She didn't sleep that night either. By the end of the week, the dreams had returned, but they weren't just dreams. She began waking up with soil beneath her nails, mud on the soles of her feet. One morning, she found her bedsheets stained with something dark, something that smelled faintly of rust and mold. Something was pulling her back. She'd left the coin in a drawer, wrapped in cloth. But now, every time she walked past it, she felt its presence like a heartbeat. Thump, thump, louder each day. And then the reflection started talking. It would mouth her name, whisper it. Sometimes it smiled when she didn't. Sometimes it cried, and sometimes it didn't have eyes at all. Evelyn tried to tell herself she was going mad, that she'd fallen asleep in the woods, hit her head, imagined the entire thing. But she knew better. There had been something in the hole, and she had left it behind. She remembered the girl's final words, "You can't unsee," and she knew now that you also couldn't run. You could only go back. The forest was waiting. Evelyn didn't remember deciding to return. She only remembered waking up with the coin in her hand and the compulsion to drive, early morning mist still clinging to the roadside like gauze. The trees along the narrow road twisted in familiar ways. She hadn't been here in weeks, yet it felt like hours, as if time obeyed something else entirely inside Wren Hollow. She parked the car in the same spot. The engine ticked as it cooled, but Evelyn didn't wait. She stepped into the woods with her backpack slung across one shoulder and the lantern in hand, its cracked glass now glowing faintly even without a flame. The forest accepted her. No resistance this time, no detours. Just a clear path that wound deeper, lower, into the earth. She no longer needed to find the old clearing. It found her. And there it was. The mill stood again, tall, silent, the wheel unmoving beside a dry, weed-choked stream. The stones were slick with moss, and the hole was back, wider now, rimmed with jagged stone and black roots that pulsed faintly, like veins. No wind moved, but the entire place hummed with anticipation. Evelyn approached. As she stepped toward the edge of the hole, the lantern brightened. She held it up and peered into the darkness below. There were no steps this time, just the slow, downward spiral of slick roots leading into the depths. She climbed down. The descent felt endless. Time became irrelevant. Her breaths grew shallower, the light dimmer, until at last the tunnel opened into a wide chamber. She stood in a stone circle. The room was massive, wider than the mill itself, carved into the earth with unnatural precision. The walls were lined with bones, not thrown or buried, but stacked like bricks. And in the center, a mirror, cracked down the middle, yet perfectly reflective. Her reflection was waiting, but it wasn't her. This Evelyn had no color to her skin. Her hair hung limp and wet. Her eyes were bottomless voids, and when she stepped forward, the mirror Evelyn did not mimic her. "Who are you?" Evelyn whispered. The reflection smiled. "I'm the one who stayed." She raised her hand. The coin gleamed in her palm. "You left me here." Evelyn's chest tightened. "You're not me." "Oh, but I am. The part you buried, the choice you didn't make. I watched, I waited, I fed." "Fed?" The mirror Evelyn tilted her head. "On guilt, on fear, on your reflection, every time you looked away from what you really are." Evelyn stepped back, but the roots shifted around her. The room began to tremble. The bones on the wall rattled like dry teeth. "You came back to finish it," the voice said from the mirror. "To merge, to remember." "I didn't choose this," Evelyn said, voice shaking. "You did, the moment you didn't run." The glass cracked wider. From the mirror, a hand emerged, pale, jointed wrong, too many fingers. It reached toward her chest. Evelyn screamed and thrust the lantern forward. The light flared. The hand recoiled, but not in pain, in laughter. "You think fire will stop what lives in your blood?" the voice said. You were born for this. They buried it, yes, but it's always been there. Evelyn looked at her hands. They were glowing, veins traced with the same light as the lantern. Symbols bloomed across her forearms, ancient, winding, moving like serpents. She gasped. What is this? Memory, said the voice. The old blood, the gatekeeper's mark. I'm not a part of this. But you are. You came back. The mirror exploded. Glass and ash swirled in a vortex of windless power. Evelyn fell to her knees as a shape rose from the shards, no longer a reflection but a figure, tall and hooded, with no face but endless depth beneath its cowl. It held the coin between long fingers. You are the toll, it whispered, and dropped the coin into her chest. Evelyn arched backward, light erupting from her spine, her eyes, her mouth. She didn't scream. She couldn't. She was splitting open and folding inward, collapsing like a dying star. The chamber filled with blinding illumination, the bones igniting one by one in silent fire. And then, silence. When she woke, Evelyn was standing in the clearing again. But the mill was gone. Only the hole remained, sealed now, covered in moss. No lantern, no coin. Her hands were empty. And her reflection no longer followed her. She walked away from Wren Hollow for the last time. But the forest still remembered her. 6 months passed. Evelyn lived differently now. She worked remotely from a small apartment in a new city, where no one knew her name, her history, or the strange rhythms that still echoed in her dreams. The nights came with quiet dread, shadows that didn't follow the rules of the moonlight, whispers from behind locked windows. But she functioned. She smiled. She lied to herself that the past was sealed. But the truth was, something had changed in her. She no longer saw herself in mirrors. It wasn't immediate. First, it was subtle, just a flicker, a delay. Then one day, the reflection was gone entirely. She would stand in front of the bathroom mirror, hands gripping the sink, and there would be no Evelyn staring back, just the empty room behind her. No matter what angle, what light, no reflection came. Worse still, sometimes something else was visible instead. Not her face, not even a human one. Something with eyes like bottomless wells, watching from behind the glass. She covered the mirrors, but mirrors are never truly gone. They hide in windows, in polished screens, in puddles on the street, and wherever there was reflection, she began to see things, shapes moving behind her, passing just out of reach. They never approached. Not yet. Evelyn tried to find explanations. She visited doctors, then psychologists. No one believed her. A few hinted at psychosis, gently, professionally. She smiled, nodded, took the prescriptions, and flushed them down the sink. What pill cures being the toll? One night she received a letter. No stamp, no return address, just her name, written in neat cursive on the front. Inside, one sentence. The hollow has opened again. You are still its gate. And beneath that, a dried sprig of something black and crumbling. It reeked of wet stone and time. Evelyn burned it, but the next night it was on her pillow. She stopped sleeping. By the second week, Evelyn's apartment began to rot. The walls peeled. Water ran upwards from the sink. Mold grew in perfect circles, forming symbols she had seen in her dreams. Her neighbor's cat went missing. Then her neighbor did too. No one came to investigate. She tried to leave. Packed a bag, got into her car, started driving west. But no matter how far she went, the road curved. The signs changed. The trees got denser. Until she found herself parked at the edge of Wren Hollow again. This time, she didn't hesitate. The clearing had changed. There was no mill, no hole. Instead, 13 standing stones circled a patch of bare earth, pulsing with dim red light. In the center, a figure waited. It wore her face. Not a reflection, an incarnation. The thing looked up and smiled, as if greeting an old friend. We've been waiting. Evelyn clenched her fists. I didn't ask for this. No, but you answered. What do you want? The figure stepped forward. Evelyn could now see it wasn't human. The skin was translucent, pulsing with veins of light. Its mouth didn't move when it spoke. It echoed from within her head. You are the key, Evelyn. The door is opening. The price must be paid again. No, I closed it. The creature raised a hand, and the 13 stones shivered. From beneath the earth, whispers rose like steam. Children crying, mothers calling. Language not made for human mouths. You only closed a door, but the hollow is deeper than one gate. It grows, it feeds, and now it's hungry. Evelyn took a step back, but the earth cracked. A vine shot up from the soil and wrapped around her ankle, pulling. Others followed. The creature just watched, expression soft and inevitable. You are the toll, Evelyn screamed. But this time, no light came, no lantern, no symbols, only darkness. A power that once burned in her had gone cold, and as she was pulled under the soil, she understood the hollow never needed permission, only return, and she had come back again.